Okay, if you're a XAML developer, there's a lot to love. But one of the things, and probably the most common pattern in XAML, is MVVM. WPF developers love it. Silverlight developers love it. Now Windows 8 XAML developers love it too. Let me start up a new project. Not everybody does it the same, and some do it just plain wrong. So let me put together just a vanilla. I'm going to create a new class here and call it MyViewModel. Just a vanilla implementation of MVVM. I'm not going to use third-party libraries, MVVM Lite, or anything like that. I'm just going to do all of this straight from scratch. All right, class. And I'll say, now this class is going to be called myRecord, and I'll make it public here. Now, remember, in order to do data binding properly inside XAML, you need INotifyPropertyChange. Like so. And then I'll implement it. It's just an event that you need. And then prop note here, I'll call it name. And that will be my first property. And look, the only thing special is it raises the property changed event, telling the UI it needs to refresh. And so I'll create another one here. Prop note of color. And we'll just let it be called color. Just like that, and then there's missing using there. So class with only two properties, name and color. That's it. You might be wondering where prop note comes from. I've already blogged on this, but this is my favorite snippet that I add every time I install Visual Studio that implements property change for me. It's pretty handy. All right, I'm going to go ahead and hide this my record. Just remember, it's just got those two properties in it. And now INotifyPropertyChanged, I'll make part of my view model as well. Remember, the goal of MVVM is to remove the logic from the view and put it in the view model. So the more I can put here, the better. My first property is going to be, it's going to be an observable collection of my record, and let's just call it records. And I like to make this sort of property a private set. Now I'll have to add a using real quick, and now I've got it. Now, obviously I need to set it. So let's use constructor and say records equals new records collection. Remember, an observable collection, standard collection, just happens to be made for data binding purposes, so that it raises events to let the UI know, just like INotifyPropertyChange does, to let the UI know that members have changed inside it. And let's create some sample data. Here we are, and I'll say for. And we'll get 10 items here. We'll say records, add new record, and let's see, its name equals i.toString, and its color equals color dot green orange. I like orange. All right, so now they'll all be orange. Let's create another property. This will be this actually needs to be a full property. A notify property here. It will be my record, and we'll call it current record. And that will let the user make a selection and then allow us to hold it. A lot of people, implement MVVM with a static singleton pattern as well, so that the view model is available to every view. That's totally fine. I've done that before. All right, so here's current record. Let's set the current record. Current record equals records.first. That way the first one's going to be default selected. And then let me jump over to the XAML. And actually, while that's loading, let me add another property. I'm going to add just a standard property called title, just for fun, right? Title equals Jerry's Records. Okay, so I have my toolbox here. Let me pin it. I'm going to grab a text block. There we go. Actually, before we do, let me show you something cool. I'm going to go up and select the page, hit F4 to go to its properties, and then I'm going to find its data context. Here it is. And remember, data context, if I say new, it doesn't show it until I build. Let me build my project first. Okay, now I'm going to select the page again and jump to its properties and select new off data context. And now you can see there's my view model. Isn't that cool? So I'll select it and say OK, and it'll set my view model using its default constructor as the context of the page which is basically setting the context of every child because it's a dependency property. The power of XAML, the power of XAML. All right, so look what it adds. I would have typed this anyway, right? No doubt about it. And so let me go to the text block, go to its properties. I'm going to change its size to 30. It's nice and big. And I'm going to change its text. And look, I'll go down and say create data binding. And when I do, look, it already recognizes that my view model is set as the data context because it's set higher in the hierarchy. I'll go ahead and set title or select title, say OK, and look, Jerry's records right there. I can control everything from the view model. Everything. Okay, let's keep showing off here. Grid view. Create a grid view like this. Let me back the page up just a hair so that we can see what it looks like. And I'll make it a little taller, I'll make it a little wider. Actually, you know, I don't like setting the width of a grid view. It doesn't scroll the way I like, so we'll do it like this. All the settings here, let me jump to F4 of the grid view now. A grid view is a repeater, and you set items source. So I'll say item source, create data binding to records. That'll be all my records. I'll say go. And look how it's already bound in the designer. That's nice, isn't it? Very nice. And then let me go to selected item. Selected item, there it is. And so I'll bind that as well. And this time I'll select current record. Right? That's the one I want. As I selected, I want current record to be updated. And to update it, I'll go to more settings and select two-way, since one-way is the default. And two-way means it'll both be set and it'll set my view model for me as well. Right? A lot of logic handled in the binding, so I don't have to do the work. That's the way I like it. I'm going to right-click my grid view here and say Additional Templates, Edit Generated Item, and then I'm going to select Create Empty. Right? So I can't quite show you. I know it's cut off just a hair. I'm just selecting Create Empty. I'll say My Template. I'm going to leave it at the scope of this page. And now in this, here's the grid for it. This is what each item is going to look like. Remember, it's a repeater, right? So every item gets this template over and over again. So here we go, grid, and let's make it width is 200, height is 100, sure, and then we'll make it grid. See how it's already looking right? Grid.background, and we'll make a solid color, and remember we can bind to the individual record here, so I can say color only had two properties. So now the background of that grid, orange. That was our default, remember? Awesome. Okay, now let me go down. I'm going to add a stack panel, and I'll make it it'll have a vertical position of the bottom, and I'll make its background also a solid color. And this will look cool. I'll say color black, and then opacity, orphan opacity, 0.75. Perfect. And then inside, and the reason I did it like this is because you can't have a background of a text block. And I just want to have that text there. So text block, font size equals 20. Let's see. Margin equals 20 again. And text will bind. And I could have done this binding just like the other in the dialog. I'll just type it here because I know it's name. Pretty easy. And now, check that out. Right there, I get to see it all running in the designer. Awesome. Now I can go over here to document outline and see how it says I'm inside the item template. I'll just double click up here and it'll take me up to the page. That's the scope that I want to be in. And so I'm going to use, this will be cool. There it is, content control. So content control is a nice, it's kind of like a repeater that only runs a single item rather than multiple like a grid view does. A content control, then I'll jump here. It'll have content property. That content property, I'll say create data binding and make that the current record. I want to read from the view model so I show the current record. I'm also going to say content template. It's a local resource, my template, the one I just created. I didn't put it inside the grid. I put it up on the page level so it could be used in more than one location. I selected it, and look, it's already showing the first one is selected, and so that's the one I see. Excellent. Absolutely excellent. Let me change that to be a simulator, say F5 so I can debug it, and let's look at it in the simulator. So it'll deploy it, it'll run it, and then there's all the data just like I was in design time. And see, it's 0. I'll select 6. Now it's 6. And now it's 2. There's 2. 7. 8. Awesome. So easy. Okay. What have we done so far? Well, let's do something special. I'll hit F7 and drop to the code behind this XAML. I'm going to hide all the usings here, get rid of a little bit of the helper stuff here, and I just want to make a point. All right, can you see it? This is what I've got in the code behind. So far, 0. How much functionality? Tons. All right. And I mean, I do it with a for loop. You could call a service, right, or anything else that you want. Now, you do have to be careful in the designer what you do in the default constructor. If you're going to use, you could use a special constructor or some if logic inside it to make sure you don't do things like read files, call asynchronous methods, and things like that. That would fail in the designer. Okay, so now we've got the presentation piece of it done. Can we do anything? What if I wanted add a button? See this button? And I'll say make current green. All right, so now I'm going to click this button. It's going to change the one that's currently selected to green. Now, that's cool, but where does the click event for this belong? In the view model, not in the code behind, right? Because this is logic for my page. This is not animation and things that are specific to the UI. This is logic for the page. Make it green. How am I going to do that? Well, we're going to do it in the view model, and let me show you how. I am going to collapse a few things so you can see title, current record, records, and that's it. Now we're going to add something new, and I'm going to make life easy for you by showing you codepaste.net. Fantastic websites where I put tons of my snippets. Check out this URL. That's where you can go get this same snippet. Click on copy, right click and copy, and now I've got a delegate command ready to paste into my project. Do not put all of your classes in a single file. Talk about not good practice. But I don't mind doing bad practice in front of all of you. So I'll jam it in here just for the sake of this demo. And now I've got a delegate command. I'm not even going to look at it. Just know that it implements I-command just like in WPF, right? Lots of power. And so let me go. I'm going to create a property now. I'll do it right here below title. And it's going to be a delegate command. And it's going to be called make green command. You could call your command whatever you want. And then I like to make it private because I don't want somebody outside my view model setting it. And then in here, I'm going to have to set it up. I'm going to have to set it up. And I will set it up right here. Command. And I'll say make green command equals new delegate command. And I know that some things belong inside that constructor, and I'm going to show you what they are. Two methods belong in that constructor. The first one is when this command executes and you're supposed to make it green, this is the method that makes it green, right? It looks like this. So far it's pretty boring. The other method that goes below it here, that is going to be the method that determines whether or not I can actually do it. Let me just implement them both and you'll see what I mean. So the first one is current record.color equals colors colorus.green. Beautiful. Now, see, that's the action. When I click it, this is the action that has occurred. And then I say here, you don't want to do it if return current record does not equal null. Let's see. So if the current record is null, it returns true. That means you can do it. Yeah, that's what I want. So there it is, two pieces of logic that I have to give this command so it knows what to do. First, what should it do, right? The command itself. Two, when should it be allowed to do it, right? Not all the time. If current record is null, you're just going to get an exception. So why do it? One other piece I need to do is to make sure that it updates whenever the related data changes. Right? So I'll just go down here to current record, and I'll say when current record is set, right here. Then I'm going to say my command.raise changed. Execute changed, right? That is just going to make sure that it reevaluates that command to make sure it can actually execute. This is the time I want it to, whenever current record is changed. Of course, this changes current record right here, doesn't it? And every time I make the selection on the grid, it changes it. So here's my command. What have I done? I have made it so that this is effectively the click event of that button. How do I reference it? Well, let me show you. Here's my XAML. I'm going to go to my button, click F4, and I'm going to find a property most people don't even know exists. Command. Right? I go to the command and I'm going to bind it. And when I do, it is not present because I haven't built yet. Duh. Let me build. F6. There we go. F4. And I'll go back to command. on the button. There you go. Here's command. This time I will say create data binding. You can see right there, make green command. I can name it anything I want. I could pass in parameters to it that are based on the record that it has. Like I could pass the whole record in if I wanted to have a command inside my repeater. There's so many different things you can do. Anyway, I'm just going to go ahead and select it. And when I do, delegate command, and I'll scroll to the right so you can see it. See? Command equals make green command. This is great. I don't need a click event on this button. Not only that, remember that returns true or false, if it's null? That will disable the button when the command is not allowed. So I don't have to have logic that says, now your logic, like let me jump to it right here. If the record is not null, then don't do it, right? Don't do it if it's null. That's easy logic. Your logic might actually be special. You may say things like, if you're not an administrator, you can't do it. If you are an administrator, but it's the wrong time of day, or fill in the blank, right? All of that logic is now inside your view model. In fact, you could abstract that to a base view model if you needed to, so that it could be reused in all of your views. And rather than having it in the code behind your page, does that even make sense? Not at all. Not at all. So now I've got a button that does logic that has its own restrictions around it, right, to see whether or not it should execute. Right here in the XAML, declared right here. And let me just F7. How much do I have on my page? Still nothing. Still nothing. Isn't that cool? Now, it doesn't mean this should always be blank, right? The idea of model view model is the logic of your page, the logic of the data is actually abstracted away to the view model so that you can test it, so that you can reuse it, so that you can swap it out for mock data. So many things you can do. Your page can still have logic in it, right? What if you need to implement an animation when the user does something, or a transition, or something like that? That belongs on the page because that view, that is the logic around the UI, and it belongs right here. It may never be used again. So this is not an exercise in how little code we can put in the code behind of a XAML page. This is an exercise in how much of the correct code we can remove from the code behind and put into the view model where it belongs. There you go. All right, so let's run it and see what it's like. Can I just show you that the entire thing implemented 4 lines of XAML. Breathtaking. All right, breathtaking. Let's not overdo it. All right, we'll debug it. We'll come up. We'll see all the data just like we saw in the designer. As I select, look at that, 6, 4, 1, 2, 8, 7, 3. They select the way you'd want. I'm going to make it green, but first, before I do, I'm going to unselect, right? I just right-click with my mouse to do it. I'll unselect, and look, I could click all day long. That button's now disabled. That's because that logic just ran that said if current selection is blank or is null, then it can't execute. Pretty cool. So let me select 7, and now you can see it's highlighting because it's not disabled. I'll select it, and it makes it green. Now it's executing that other method, which could be as elaborate as you want it to be, right? Now I'll go over to number 1, select it again. See, it works like a charm. Bam. And as I move around, everything's updated the way you would want it to. We've done this in applications for a save button so that save is disabled until the user makes a change across the entire application. That allows me to put save buttons wherever I want to, even 2 times on a page if it's important, and I can disable them all. Because more than one button can declare the same command, and that command just runs, and it's all just bound to it. Okay, model view model. That's what Silverlight developers love. That's what WPF developers love. That's what Windows 8 XAML developers love too. Start using Mvvm and you will start to feel the power as you start abstracting away that logic where it belongs, and you'll start feeling that everything is finally in a place and it's not cluttered together in your code behind where really it does not belong. Okay, best of luck.